Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here. And in today's Grand Theft Auto 5 video, I'm going to be doing a speed test comparison of the new unreleased vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. That being the Turismo Classic, Infernus Classic, the Hijack Rustin, and I'm also going to include the Duke of Death in this category as well, since it's technically a muscle class, and I would assume, since we're going to be able to buy it, we'll also be able to use it in races. Now, I just want to throw out a few things before we get started today. Number one, these vehicles are not out in Grand Theft Auto Online. Luckily, I had the help of my good friend Urban, who actually allowed me to do this so that we could test these out. Number two, this is not meant to be a serious test. I did this more for fun rather than anything. Really, what we're doing right now is just going to be a simple drag test, and there's only so much you can determine from each one of these tests themselves. If you're looking for more of an official test and official results, I'm sure that when these vehicles are actually added into the game, someone like BROUGHY will do a test or whatnot, and he'll give you better results. He'll probably give you better analysis than I'm able to right now. So don't take this too seriously. It's just for fun, but it also should give you a pretty good idea of these vehicles and how they might end up performing in their respected classes. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into this and let's get it started. So what we're doing right now is comparing these cars. We've got this kind of drag strip setup right here. These vehicles are fully customized and fully modified, and what we're doing is one of us is throwing a grenade. When that grenade goes off, we accelerate. We're not doing any pre-boosting or anything like that. It's a pretty simple launch. So the first test we wanted to do was the Turismo Classic versus the Infernus Classic. Now, both of these cars are sports classic vehicles. I'm not exactly sure why Rockstar put them in this category, especially when a vehicle like the Penetrator is in the supercar class, but nonetheless, and this was our first result, and I think it was very interesting, with the Turismo being significantly quicker than the Infernus in this test. So off the bat, they were kind of close, but about maybe a third of the way into this race, you really saw the separation between the Turismo and the Infernus. I mean, it wasn't even close. So to me, this indicates that between these two vehicles, at least from what we've seen in this drag test right here, acceleration and top speed certainly look to go to the Turismo over the Infernus Classic. Now, what's interesting is the price of both of these vehicles. The Infernus is $915,000, where the Turismo is $705,000. So for about $200,000 cheaper, it looks like you're going to be getting a quicker car here. And we even did a second test, and we had really the exact same results, and that the Turismo was indeed quicker than the Infernus. So to me, those results right there are pretty crazy. So that was the comparison between those two vehicles right there. However, let's compare them to the current king of the sports classic category right now, and that is the Sterling GT. So we're going to be starting off this test with the Turismo R versus the Sterling GT. Exact same setup right here, where we're going to be going as the grenade goes off, and the results here, even more surprising. The Turismo absolutely smokes the Sterling GT. I mean, it's not even close in this race. Literally by about 5 seconds in, it was over. So the results there were absolutely crazy, and I wanted to do the exact same thing again. We pretty much did the same test about once or twice more, just to make sure we didn't have any outliers or anything like that, but the Turismo just completely obliterated the Sterling GT in this test, which was crazy. We also did the exact same test with the Infernus as well, and same results here. I mean, I can't really compare the difference between this test versus the Sterling and the Turismo test versus the Sterling, but the Infernus was just flying by it. I mean, the exact same thing here. So the Turismo is on a whole nother level than the Infernus. The Infernus is on a whole nother level than the Sterling GT, and then the Turismo is just on a whole nother level from all of them. So have we found a new killer for the sports classic class? I think we have. It looks as if the Turismo is going to be the clear winner here. However, there might be some other aspects of the Infernus that give it an advantage. Again, there's only so many things we can test without having like an official track or having these in online officially so that they can be added into races, etc. But that right there is pretty crazy. And for the most part, it looks like we've got two new dominant kings of the sports classic category, that being the Turismo Classic and the Furnace Classic. So when these come out, it looks like you're going to need to buy at least one of the two if you're going to want to remain somewhat competitive in these Sports Classic category races. That's the Sports Classics. Let's move on to the other vehicle, and that is the Hijack Rustin. So what's interesting about Hijack is the only other vehicle that was made by Hijack is the Chameleon, which is a full-blown electric car. And the thing we know about electric cars is they have pretty good acceleration, but they kind of lack in top speed. So I was wondering if the same thing was going to happen here with the Hijack Rustin. So the first test we did was the Rustin versus the Elegy, which is supposed to be like the king of the sports car class. Exact same test set up here. And as I predicted, the Rustin got off to a pretty quick start due to its really good acceleration. However, it does lack in top speed, as you can see. Even though we get towards the end, and even though I got a really good jump, the Elegy has already caught up and already crossed the finish line. So it was absolutely no match for the Elegy. And we ran a second test, and I think the Elegy got an even better start there. And right off the bat, we get maybe a tiny lead, but even still, the Elegy pretty much just dominates the whole thing right there. So it doesn't look as if the Rustin is going to surpass the king of the sports car class, which is kind of unfortunate given its price point, which I think is like $440-ish thousand. So when you think about the fact that the Elegy is free, that's pretty insane. However, I didn't want to stop there. I did want to do some other tests to kind of find out where this would be in the kind of sports class range. We tested against the Masacro, same thing. The Masacro race car absolutely trashed us, so there was really no competition right there. We also tried it with the Feltzer. Feltzer race was a little bit closer, but still pulled away at the end, so it wasn't in the top tier class, that's for sure. We then tried it with the Bestia GTS. Bestia GTS still blew by us. We absolutely had no chance right there. And then finally, last but not least, we tried it against the Spectre Custom, which still really dominated us as well. It really just blew by us right at the end. So even though the Rustin has really good acceleration and that it jumps off the line quite well, it really does lack in top speed. In fact, none of the vehicles we tested, it was faster than top speed-wise. So does that mean the Rustin is going to be completely worthless? I wouldn't say so yet. Its acceleration is really nice, and from the very brief moments I had it, it did turn and handle quite nicely. So I would imagine on tracks that don't have many long straightaways and turn really sharply just due to that acceleration, you might find yourself having an advantage. Again, I am a super amateur when it comes to racing knowledge, but just based off of that information, the Rustin might be useful, but it still just lacks so incredibly much in the top speed that I still think you're going to be way better with something like a Feltzer or a Masacro race car, Jester race car, or an Elegy. I just think you're going to be way better off than using the Rustin. All right, and finally, last but not least, we tested the Duke of Death. So you guys know the Duke of Death is going to be added sometime soon into Grand Theft Auto Online. I'm not exactly sure when, but it's likely going to be a vehicle that we'll be able to use in races. So I wanted to test it against the king of the muscle car class right now, and that is the Pizvazzer Dominator. And our results were pretty interesting. The Duke of Death jumps off to an incredibly fast start. When this race started, I was like, oh my gosh, the Duke of Death is about to be the greatest thing ever. But it turns out that it, like the Rustin, has an unbelievable amount of acceleration as well, but slightly lacks in the top speed. And the Pizvazzer Dominator catches up at the end. And by the end of our drag race, I think we either tied or it beat us to the finish line. It was really, really close. We ended up running it a second time, and the results were really close as well, almost to the point where I couldn't tell. But even still, the gap that it makes up is insane. So even though that it's not on par with the top muscle car, will the Duke of Death be completely useless in online races if it is a vehicle that we can use to race? Absolutely not. That acceleration is nuts. I mean, that's one of the best accelerating muscle cars that we've got in the game. So again, tracks that aren't necessarily a drag strip or that have long straightaways, you might actually have a real advantage using something along the lines of the Duke of Death. Not to mention the amazing stopping power that a vehicle like this gets. I mean, we obviously didn't test that in this video today, but the Duke of Death essentially has like insurgent-like stopping power, which is absolutely insane. So once again, it'll be very interesting to see what the final kind of consensus is about these vehicles when they are released. But for now, this should give you a good idea of where they stand. To me, the two sports classic vehicles, Turismo and Infernus, are clearly going to be the most dominant sports classic vehicles. Must-buys if you want to compete in those sort of races. Now, I don't know how many people are doing sports classic races. That might, improve a little bit once these vehicles release, but I think those are going to have to be must buys. The Rustin, I think you can get away with not purchasing unless you just really love the look or love the style of the vehicle. And then with the Duke of Death, I'm certainly going to give it a try. I mean, that acceleration and obviously the toughness of the vehicle itself is a really appealing factor, and it might be very usable and suitable for races. We're really just going to have to wait and see. Again, this is a very simple amateur test that I'm doing right now, but since I had the ability to spawn these into the game, and most people don't at the moment, I figured I would kind of do a service and do a quick little test like this. Let me know your thoughts and opinions and more in the comment section down below. What did you think of the results of this video? Were you surprised by anything like that? I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you did go on to enjoy the video though, a like rating would of course be awesome. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you like daily GTA 5 videos like this. With out of the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.